Hello and welcome to the Mindy Raquan podcast. I am your host, Mindy Raquan, and today we're going to be talking about when life isn't fair. So, I have spent a lot of my life comparing myself to other people and thinking that my life isn't fair because I don't have what they have, and thinking that everybody else seems to have something that I don't have. And no matter what I did, I always thought that I didn't get what others seemed to have, and so that just meant that life wasn't fair for me, and there were a lot of very specific things that I wanted, and I'm not gonna say exactly what they are, but, I just had a list of very specific things that I thought I had to have in order for my life to be fair. And one day, I was talking to God about it, and He told me that I was looking for a big breakthrough moment when I would suddenly find the solution to my struggle, and I didn't know exactly what that solution would look like, but I was just waiting for the day that my dreams would come true. And I was just waiting for the day that things would suddenly happen the way I wanted them to happen. And the place that God brought me to that day was having open hands. He showed me that I had to come to him and just lay every dream at his feet, and even every broken dream that I still was holding on to that had never come true. I still had to lay all of those at his feet. And um it's not about my dreams coming true, but it's about his dreams and plans for me, and I had to be okay with the fact that whatever he chooses for me is what's best. And I must say that my life does not look like what I wanted. I never thought that my life would look the way that it does today, but honestly, it's one of the best things that could have happened. And if my life had gone exactly the way that I chose, that I would have chosen, I would not be the person that I am today, and I wouldn't have the relationship with God that I have. I would not have a marriage like I have. And I just feel so blessed. And it's because I was willing to choose to do what God wanted me to do, even if I didn't really, I wouldn't have chosen that for myself. But because I was willing to surrender, He did so much with that. And the beautiful thing is when you completely release and surrender all of your broken pieces, He does so much more with that than what you could have done. Excuse me. So, finding that deep inner rest does not come from having what I want, and rest only comes from Him, even if you have broken expectations or disappointment or circumstances that didn't work out. So I'm going to read a story from 1 Samuel 1. And this is the story of Hannah and how she really, really, really wanted to have a family. She really wanted to have children. And her husband, Elkanah, he had two wives, Hannah and Penina. I don't know how you pronounce her name, but um, Penina had children, and Hannah did not. And each year they would take a trip to the tabernacle, and each year Elkanah would offer sacrifices, and he would give portions of the meat to Penina and each of her children. But to Hannah, he gave her only one portion because the Lord had not given her any children. And each year, Peninnah would make fun of Hannah because the Lord had kept her from having children. And it says that it happened every year. And each time, Hannah would be in tears and would not even eat. And um, one day, it says Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord, and she made this vow: O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon me, upon my sorrow, and answer my prayer, and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut. And so she made this vow, and Eli saw her, and he said that he said, "In that case, go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him." And so we can see Hannah's sorrow bringing her to this place of prayer. And I'm going to be talking more about all of that in a second. But to finish up the story, the family went home, and it says that when Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I asked the Lord for him." And so once Samuel was born, it says that Hannah waited to go back to the tabernacle until he was weaned, and then when the child was weaned, she took him to the tabernacle. And the very last few verses are so special. I want to read those. "Sir, do you remember me?" Hannah asked. She asked Eli. "I am the woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life." And they worshiped the Lord there. So that is just such a special story. And I just noticed for the first time that Hannah's story is just so beautiful, because this place of brokenness in her life became her most powerful, became the most powerful part of her story. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And her story is just such a beautiful illustration of the power of surrender. And the thing that really stood out to me is that if she had not gone through that agony of not being able to have a child, and then she endured the mockery of the woman who did have children, and if she had not gone to that place of deep anguish and pain, Samuel would not have become the next priest. And at this time, Israel was really struggling, and they were not doing well. And Eli was, I believe he was a God-honoring priest, but his sons were not. And so the future of Israel was looking very bleak and dim. And so God was providing a priest through Samuel. He was providing a priest through Samuel that was actually God-honoring, and that would actually take Israel in a good direction. And so another thing is that Samuel was a key person in the Old Testament, and he actually anointed David to be king, and David was in the lineage of Jesus. And so that was very instrumental in bringing Jesus to earth so that he could die and rise again, and so that we could have eternal life. And so this just plays such a huge part in the story of Israel and in the story of Jesus coming. And it's just so beautiful that Hannah chose to surrender this pain, and instead of making it a place of bitterness and anger, she chose to let it push her into a place of prayer. Her pouring out in her tears and her prayer of surrender, coming from that deep pain, it all produced this beautiful fruit of obedience. And when she was enduring mockery from that other woman, I'm sure she would not have thought that it was fair. But she didn't let that mockery and taunting push her into bitterness. And she took that place of deep agony and pain, and she made it a place of prayer. So I know that she was praying for years for babies. I'm sure she was praying for years for God to open her womb and to give her a child. And her prayers also came from a place of surrender. It's so easy for us to pray from a place of like, God, I need this. I deserve this because I need to be happy. Or, it's all about my desires and my dreams. But she was praying from a place of aligning herself with God's desires. She was praying in alignment with what God wanted for her, and she wasn't trying to be a rival of of the other woman, she was trying to please God, and she was trying to get God's will to come to pass in her life. And it wasn't about demanding her way. It was about God's glory and pointing people back to his faithfulness. And the very answer which she wanted, which was a son, she told God that she would actually give him back to God. And that's true surrender. It's recognizing the power of God and trusting in his ability to do what only he can do. And so, because ultimately what we want at the end of the day has to be God himself, no matter the answer to our prayers. So no dream, fulfilled or broken, has the power to satisfy our hearts. Our heart's deepest need can only be met by God himself. So, 1 Samuel 2 has a very beautiful prayer that Hannah prayed after God answered her prayer and she birthed Samuel and weaned him and took him to the temple. And I'm going to read it. 1 Samuel 2. Then Hannah prayed, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. The Lord has made me strong. Now I have an answer for my enemies. I rejoice because you rescued me. No one is holy like the Lord. There was no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Stop acting so proud and haughty. Don't speak with such arrogance. For the Lord is a God who knows what you have done. He will judge your actions. The bow of the mighty is now broken, and those who stumbled are now strong. Those who were well fed are now starving, and those who were starving are now full. The childless woman now has 7 children, and the woman with many children wastes away. The Lord gives both death and life. He brings some down to the grave, but raises others up. The Lord makes some poor and others rich. He brings some down and lifts others up. He lifts the poor from the dust and the needy from the garbage dump. He sets them among princes, placing them in seats of honor. For all the earth is the Lord's, and he has set the world in order. He will protect his faithful ones, but the wicked will disappear in darkness. No one will succeed by strength alone. Those who fight against the Lord will be shattered. He thunders against them from heaven. The Lord judges throughout the earth. He gives power to his king. He increases the strength of his anointed one. And it just shows how the Lord is in control and God is really the one who has the power to make things happen. And it's really not up to us at all. So later on in this same chapter, it talks about the continuing of Hannah's story. So it says, Samuel, though he was only a boy, served the Lord. He wore a linen garment like that of a priest. Each year his mother made a small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. Before they returned home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord give you other children to take the place of this one she gave to the Lord." And the Lord gave Hannah 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. And I just want to encourage you that if you have parts of your life that you think are not fair because you don't have certain dreams fulfilled, if you don't have certain things that you would really want, just remember that God is the one who is in control, and we need to pray in line with his desires, and that he is the one who we need to shape out our desires, and our dreams are not bigger than him. And so the way that God works through those places of surrender is a mystery, and he does what he does for a reason. Don't let bitterness and anger cloud your vision. It's in those deep, dark places where God does the most work, and he is always, always, always faithful, and he's always good. So just remember that, and you are encouraged today. And thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.